like showing my students my own prom photos back in the day. And I like to tell my students, you can go from feeling, awkward like this to looking like this. And I can tell them they can go from that to being on national TV.
That is true. Michaela Tuttle from Nashville, Tennessee. You're a wine import manager. Does that basically mean you get paid to drink wine?
Ostensibly, yes. I either tell people that or when I'm at a cocktail party, I tell them I'm a drug dealer and just wait. It's actually true. Yes, so I get to travel and drink amazing wine and feasting in dishes. So.
That is fantastic. And Mallory Cass from Brooklyn, New York, children's book editor.
Are we on now?
Yeah, we are on.
Okay, good. Well, we want to welcome everybody. There's still a few people coming, I think, here to the house, one or two. What I wanted to do tonight is we've had a huge number of lectures over the last 15 or 16 months. And so we wanted to kind of review some of the things that we talked about. And I thought it would be a good time for question and answers for people. There has to be people with questions they want to ask. And I know the subject matter is abstruse, but we are an esoteric outpost. And the thing that's interesting about what we're doing here in Michigan is during this whole COVID thing, every esoteric organization that I know of, except maybe the Lucis Trust, is shut down. We have continued unerringly to give lectures here, not just me, but we've had individuals in the group who aren't in attendance tonight, but who have given lectures. And we've also had a series of CDs and DVDs, sorry, on lectures by Dr. Baker, very abstruse subjects. One of them that comes to mind is the projection to the core of the sun, which is an initiatory event. And he gives detailed explanations of his experience in doing so, which I found amazing, to say the least. So we're going to try to open it up for questions. I just want to say that we've talked about a really diverse number of subjects, everything from Joe Biden's horoscope, Fauci's horoscope, Vladimir Putin's horoscope, a whole bunch of other people, Hillary, Uma Abedin and her husband, Anthony Weiner. We're working on other lectures that'll be forthcoming for the horoscope of Kyle Rittenhouse and Greta, what's her name, Thunberg, who's, they were born on the same day. We had to do a solar chart because we didn't have the correct time for their births. So those will be lectures that will be forthcoming. And I'll put all that together. We talked about the 7 rays. We talked a little bit about ray analysis. We talked about the 7 postulates of the ageless wisdom teaching. We talked about the opening of the third eye. We talked about esoteric healing. We talked about Chinese acupuncture. The list is almost endless. We talked about the importance of keeping a spiritual diary. It's important to remember that it's through the soul, through the dream life, that the soul is constantly trying to communicate to us. It's telling us something. If we would only write those dreams down, and if we would only meditate for 20 minutes a day, and if we would read the esoteric classics, we could begin to open the head centers. Those three disciplines create vortices of energy that overlap, and it's the overlapping of these discs of energy where the eye is created. And all eyes require a lens, and we have to create the lens. Some people, because of disciplines over many lifetimes, have done that. Others are in the process of doing it. I don't promote clairvoyance per se. It can be a valuable tool. It can also be an anchor around your neck if it's not used properly. It can be a crutch. It can be a dangerous thing. In the more advanced disciples, of course, that's not an issue. The ultimate knowing really is conscious mediumship and having experiences in conscious mediumship. At this time in human unfoldment, that's the highest form of knowing. To be conscious and yet to be mediumistic, extraordinary. She might want to go out.
You want to let her out?
Could you let her out? Yeah. We got puppies here tonight. You have to unlock the door first. And, open it up about 1.5 feet. She'll run out.
Okay.
Thanks. So anyway, we, as I said earlier, we've covered just a mountain of material in these last, whatever it is, 15 months, 16 months. Yeah, Randy, question?
Question. Dave, have you been able to just see by your exposure to the different rays and all your readings about the different rays?
Mhm.
Can you identify a person
Mhm.
by listening to their tone of voice or their communication or the body type? Can you identify their ray types?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
what
we
is it
teach
you
that.
look for?
We teach that in Baker. Really gives wonderful examples of ray analysis. When psychology becomes an exact science, which it isn't, but it will be in another 100 years or so, it will be the psychology of the rays, the 7 rays, which are the key to the mystery. They're the builders in the form world. The world of form is under the jurisprudence of the 7 rays. We say that these rays are broken into groups of will rays. The odd numbers are will rays, 1, 3, 5, and 7. And the love rays are 2, 4, and 6.
Okay.
Jesus was a master of the 6th ray of devotion and idealism, which we see in certainly in fundamentalist Christianity, but we see it both the 6th and the 7th ray in the evidence within the Catholic Church. It's the incense, and, the diadem, and the rituals of the church, but they apply to other religions as well. It's not just Christianity. But because most of us were raised in the Christian belief, it's something that we bring up because people that are Christians can relate to what you're talking about. But you also see it in all the other religions. So yeah, we do that. We do body types, mental types, the emotional body, the astral body, which is the emotional body. he gave an example one time about a guy I knew who, you know his name, but he was a character. He was a pool hustler by the name of Minnesota Fats. And he had a third-rate mind. And he could talk for hours. And there was a bunch of pool players in Detroit one time. And one of them was a guy named Jack White. Jack White said to one of the other guys, they were all sitting at a big table in a restaurant. He said, I'll bet you if I ask Fats a question, he'll talk for an hour. The guy said, oh, can't do it. He would. So he asked him one time, he said, Fats, he said, what was pool hustling like back in Detroit in the 1940s? And he said that Fats, honest to God, he talked nonstop for 3 hours. That's an extreme third-rate mind.
Okay.
See? So people who talk and skip around and they jump from one thing, to the other subject, usually a really good example of a person with a third-rate mind. But you look at Blavatsky and you look at Baker, first-rate personalities, very powerful, willful personalities, and also first-rate souls. And so they're sometimes difficult to deal with people like that because they're so powerful and they have this exertion of their energies, their personality types. Second-rate are very loving people, second-rate souls. The majority, in fact, we have lists here of the souls or the rate types. I don't have it.
Like examples of
Yeah.
famous people?
They're not famous people, but it tells what they are. We've got and the percentages. About 60% of the population of the world has a second-rate soul. So, and you would expect that. And when you form a group, it's nice to have a mixture of different ray types within the group. You don't want all love rays, 2, 4, and 6. And you don't want all will rays, 1, 3, 5, and 7. What's happening in the world right now is that the rays are changing. The planetary energies are changing. Rays 3, 4, and 7 are coming into prominence. Another quality or characteristic of a third ray soul is a person who is concerned about things like animal rights, the rights of animals. You talk about that 30 years ago, and people laugh at you. They don't anymore because it's being assimilated into the collective consciousness. We're also seeing, if you watch the news, we're seeing fourth ray energy coming into the planet. And fourth ray is the ray of art and harmony through conflict. But one of the things that the fourth ray does is the fourth ray, it destroys and it rebuilds, and in the end, it creates harmony. I used to say years ago when I lectured 30 years ago that if you would have told anyone during World War II that the Germans and the Japanese would one day become our greatest allies, they would have put you in a lunatic asylum. But yet, they are our greatest allies. Some of them, England, of course, always England. But it's the way the fourth ray works itself out. Tremendous conflict. People create conflicts in their lives. I've done it before.
Mm-hmm.
And you grow beyond, you grow out of the conflict. And we've known people like that who consistently do it. Another thing that's happening with the fourth ray, two interesting points, we've talked about them before in our lectures, is that Bailey said that as the fourth ray came into the planet, blue flowers would begin to disappear. And I had an article from the Smithsonian on the disappearance, the baffling, how scientists were baffled because blue flowers inexplicably were disappearing all across the planet. They had no explanation for it. Yet Bailey, 80 years ago, said that we begin to disappear as the fourth ray came in. Another thing that the fourth ray does, and you can see it every night on TV, the fourth ray brings decentralized government. And if you want to fix Washington, D.C., you have to decentralize the power. And that means the issue in the formation of this country was always states' rights versus federal rights. And it's going back to that now. We're seeing it with the abortion issue, that the Supreme Court is saying this really is a state issue, that the state should decide. Proof of the emerging fourth ray. So those are some. Seventh ray is the ray of ceremonial order and magic, what we call magic. And we're seeing magic in many forms, not only through technology, but we're seeing magic at a planetary scale where there's an awakening taking place, where people with nothing, absolutely nothing, are able to, through their efforts, create incredible things. I saw a guy in Africa. He was a Christian, but he was a really good example of a seventh ray soul who was, he had nothing. And he somehow invented a windmill he made out of old car parts. And he was able to dig a well and have water. And he was able to give fresh, clean water, which we all take for advantage of, take for granted. He was able to change the lives, the quality of lives of a certain group of people in Africa, in that part of Africa where he lived. Fresh water. We don't even consider it. But there are 2 or 3 billion people on the planet out of 7.5 billion who don't have clean water. So you have to have a huge, broad perspective on the planet to understand its problems. We visit Annie Besant talked about 16-inch vision. I've talked to you before about 16-inch vision. And she would get these young students that would come to her who were interested in esoteric subjects through the Theosophical Society. And she would say, well, now you go in that room and shut the door and sit down, and then you come out in about 15 minutes. So the 15 minutes were up, and the students would come out of the room, and she'd say, now, what color was the carpet on the floor? Oh, I don't know. How many windows were in the room? Oh, I don't know. What color were the drapes? It went on like that because they have 16-inch vision. Ooh. See, they're only looking out beyond their aura about 16 inches. That's all they see. And in discipleship in the new age, you will have to have a broader, more expansive vision of the world. You can't do it by maintaining a 16-inch vision. See, you've limited yourself. And that's really evident in America. We're spoiled here. Europe went through World War II. India has been impoverished for 100,000 years or more. China, the same thing. Only now is China emerging and India into really the 21st century, after having lived for 1,000 years in some medieval or beyond before, almost Bronze Age kind of a mentality of the people, but they're springing out of it. And so we're living in an unusual time because it's a period of a new millennium, the third millennium. It's the 21st century. It's the end of the 20th century, the beginning of the 21st century. So it's a unique period. It's a unique time. The world is changing. I had a friend of mine out in California, a wonderful guy, Adam DeFranco, and he posted something today. It was an image of blue people,
Yeah, I saw that.
beings who are blue, and of course they exist in the elemental life forms, and it's also proof when you could take the image with a camera and catch it, and an individual can see it with their naked eyes, that the veils are thinning, so that the illusion of me talking, or any teacher of the esoteric talking about these abstruse ideas of the invisible worlds, which are really the foundations of quantum physics, of the astral, mental, etheric worlds, begins to make sense. And we've said, I think one of the first lectures that we had here, we talked about the thinning of the veils. And this pictures that this lady had taken with her camera were extraordinary, really extraordinary photographs, I have to say. But there'll be a lot more of that in the future. It'll build a foundation of understanding of the invisible worlds, which science doesn't talk about yet. Some of them are beginning to realize, but 100 years from now will be a fact. So we're pioneers, as I've said before. We're frontiersmen. We're the Daniel Boones and the Davy Crockett's of the Aquarian age. And Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett could have never fathomed an automobile assembly plant, or an IBM computer, an Apple computer. See, and we can't really fathom, very few of us, the things that will exist in 100 or 200 years. And it's only been, what, 200 years or less since Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone. So we have to expand again our visions of life on Earth at this time, because it is such a unique time. And anybody has any questions, you can jump in at any point. Don't hesitate. And I had a friend of mine probably tuned in tonight, a lady that lives in Georgia, and was asking me, why is the world so screwed up at this time? People are so crazy. And of course, the reason is that we're entering a new age. The Piscean age is dying, and the age of Aquarius is being born. And the birthing process is always painful and difficult for us. And especially when you're talking about change and birthing at a planetary level. It's massive. It's a huge concern. And it's happening whether we realize it or not. Yeah.
Have you ever taken any interest? Oh, did you find anything more about the Putin chart? You were looking for the Putin chart.
No, I haven't. I tell you truthfully, I haven't been able to, because I'm just so caught up in my sister's cancer treatment and trying to help her. But I will do that in the future. There are interesting things that I see happening in parallel where I'm putting a lecture together on the parallel universe and the significance of atavism. And atavism is where previous lives were a powerful influence on the individual soul, personality, and they've carried that energy and vibration with them into this incarnation. And an example of that would be, remember the Hare Krishna people that hung out in the airports back in the 70s and 80s, and they were just really into it, man. And some of them still are. Well, it's died off. There was a huge movement here in Detroit, and they were all living down at the Fisher Mansion. And it was kind of a mixture of a hippie Hindu utopia that they were creating there. But of course, its energies have dissipated dramatically. But people, many of those people were people who had a number, maybe a series of 5 or 10 or more incarnations into that environment in India. And they brought it with them, unfortunately, into this incarnation, into America. Anyway, so yeah, of course.
When you were talking about the people who see only 16 inches, did you say they were one of the numbers, one of those numbers from 1 to 7?
No, I didn't say that. No, I said they were people who were interested in the esoteric teachings. And so they would go to various esoteric teachers. One of them was Annie Besant. She was an integral part of the early Theosophical Society.
Yeah.
Annie Besant, she founded the Detroit Lodge. And she founded the lodge in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is where I was kind of initiated into Theosophy 10 years before the Detroit Lodge, 1906. And she would get these young students that would come in, and she would, as part of their training, she'd put them in a room like this. She'd say, now you just stand there for 15 minutes and then come out.
Yeah.
And she'd ask them questions about me, and they could all answer almost nothing.
So
because they're just not, they're unaware. They're not paying attention of their surroundings in the world that they're living in.
So would they fall into one of the 7
No,
that you were talking about?
No.
They're not even
they
in
could
there.
they could be any ray.
So can you be like a little of one of those numbers and a little of another one, or you're always
Yeah.
just one of them?
No.
You can be a little of.
You have a soul is on a certain ray.
Okay.
Your emotional or astral body is on a certain ray. I think I've got some. We'll do a night of ray analysis, and I've got wonderful charts that show the ray composition of Leonardo da Vinci, of Adolf Hitler. We have all of their rays and their soul rays, and we have all of that. And like I said, when psychology becomes an exact science, it'll be what I'm talking about now, but it'll be 100 years from now. And the esoteric astrology that I talk about and that I use is 200 years yet into the future. So yeah, I'm a pioneer and I'm talking about these things, but yet there are people who are interested in it. And they're usually old souls who have had some experience or knowledge of these things in previous lives. Yeah.
Do you have any ideas or opinions about Elon Musk and what his part in history is?
But he's shaking things up.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And in my mind, when I look at Elon Musk, I see a man who is an initiate being. He's probably a 4th degree initiate or higher. And there's a reason why he's the richest man in the world.
Okay.
And he's going to shake things up. That's 4th ray. And he may be, in a way, almost a Messiah-like figure who will bring about tremendous change. I'm not talking about Jesus. I'm talking about
Technology.
a guy who is a powerful, he may even have the support, I believe he does, of the spiritual hierarchy of the planet. See, we're in territory that is not commonly discussed, you know. We're not talking about theosophical fundamentalism here. We're talking about New Age perspective on the esoteric reality of the world that we're living in and the changing times that we're all a part of. We're all a part of.
I think, you know, you remember you were talking about one time there is going to be like the elevators to go to Mars.
Yeah, the space elevators.
Space elevator.
NASA's already invented them. They just haven't used them yet.
Yeah, but I think there's more to it. Probably Musk is involved in that
Yeah.
origination.
That's the zip line or the cable?
Yeah, it's a cable that'll be made out of some kind of a new material that'll be stronger than diamonds. And we've got in one of our PowerPoint lectures, we show it. But they'll colonize the moon. It sounds way out, but it isn't. They'll be able to build an atmosphere on the moon by virtue of the fact that water exists on the moon. And that once they tap the water, they can fill the craters of the moon with water. And they'll be able to take one of the things that will happen when we finally get to free energy is that we'll be able to desalinate ocean water and we'll irrigate the deserts of the world. And in so doing, we will change the oxygen, nitrogen composition of the planet, and the planet will become oxygen enriched, and incredible things will happen. No one will starve to death, so you have to have very serious birth control things in effect. It's an exciting time. And what they'll do with the space elevator will move in synchronous motion with the Earth's rotation. And okay, you get down. And so they'll fill these craters on the moon with this salt from the desalination process. They'll take it on the space elevator to the moon. They'll have saltwater seas. They'll form clouds. The clouds will create an atmosphere. People will colonize the moon. And the benefit is that, see, it sounds like science fiction, but we're living in the age of science fiction. The moon is moving away from the Earth. And in 1 billion years, the moon won't exist. In 1 billion years, the Earth might not exist. But the moon will have moved into another region of space, and it will have people living on it who once lived on the Earth. And we have a reverse of that now. If you read the occult writings and the esoteric teachings, that the moon was the mother of the Earth. It's the opposite of what science says. Their absurd proposition is that some giant meteorite smashed into the Earth when it was forming, and this molten mass, it gathered out in the Pacific, which is an inexplicably large body of water, and created the planet, the moon. But the moon, they've already proven it scientifically. The moon is about 1 billion or 2 billion years older than the Earth. So it's, once you realize that, then the whole perspective changes. And we talked about very abstruse things about Sanat Kumara, the Lord of the world, in the esoteric teachings, and how there were certain things that were brought to Earth that aided in the Earth's evolution. that the average person doesn't know anything about. Things like bees, who are the most unaerodynamic flying objects in the world and whose wings vibrate at such a sporadic rate of speed that by scientific theory, it's impossible for them to fly, yet they fly. And they pollinate the plants of the world. And things like grapes and wheat, and how we created wine, and we created bread, and we take communion and we drink the wine and we eat the wheat wafer. It has some symbolic meaning to Jesus, but it has an even greater meaning to the evolution of our solar system. Those are the kind of things that we talk about here. And they're important because people have questions. Yeah.
So my perception right now is it seems like a lot of powerful people on the planet are allowing or are behind what I kind of consider a bunch of mad scientists experimenting with the environment and destroying the trees and all that stuff. It's almost, I feel at times like they're doing as much as they're a bunch of mad scientists and they're doing as much as they can to see what will destroy the environment and how that will affect humans. And it feels like the people in power are also trying to make it so there's not as many people on the planet, and that the people that end up surviving are going to be their slaves. And I think that just in this country, the way that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights have been dismantled right before our very eyes, and the laws are being broken daily right before our very eyes, and these people aren't being prosecuted. I heard the Department of Justice is bearing 2,000 cases a day. This, to me, feels, it gives me the feeling like, okay, we've had a pretty cushy, like I'm an average middle-class person. I consider myself an average middle-class person in this country. It seems like it's been pretty cushy for the middle class and above. And now it kind of feels like, all right, now they got my Irish up. I want to, I just retired last year, and I want to find meaningful ways to try to contribute to the growth and the health of the planet and humans. But at the same time, it kind of feels like in this country, they've dismantled the checks and balance. So even when it goes to the Supreme Court, most of the Supreme Court justices are just as corrupt too. So it's not even working anymore. So
it's all fourth ray energy.
So is it for people like that feel like me, is it for us to understand that this is part of the process of getting through to a place where things start to improve and are better for humans?
2025, the mystics all talk about the year 2025. It doesn't mean that all of our problems are going to be solved, but there'll be an exteriorization of the spiritual hierarchy where Buddhas and Christ-like beings will take form. Some of them will overshadow guys like you and me. And if we're worthy of it, and it'll help change the world. We're in a period of planetary evil, is what's happening.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous evil. It existed in World War II with the Nazis. It existed in Atlantis 240,000 years ago. It was the Mahatma Maurya, one of the founders of the Theosophical Society, who said that 240,000 years ago, if you spoke the truth in Atlantis, you would be put to death. We're not far from that right now.
Well, we're in some cases, that's exactly what's happening. People are getting suiciding or disappearing.
I told my vice president, I saw it in the microcosm. when I worked at General Motors Design Center. And I told my vice president, I said, the politics of this building is corrupt. And the guys that are influencing it will have you believe that the lie is the truth and that the truth is the lie. And so he was new there. He'd been in Europe for 25 years and they brought him to America to run the design center. But it's the old postulate of the 7 postulates, that the third postulate states as above, so below. So if I can see it in the microcosm at General Motors, I know it's true in Washington, D.C., or it's true in Russia, or it's true in the Ukraine, see, which is a very corrupt country, or any of the other countries of the world. They're corrupt. What else can you say?
So what is your take on people like Bill Gates and Soros and Klaus Schwab, who literally are trying to control our personal lives, each individual personal lives in this country and all over the world? What is your
part of the planetary evil? They're black magicians. They take the truth and they spin it into a lie, and they take a lie and try to spin it into the truth. And they're people that help them are in the news.
right?
The news agencies.
Oh, they
They're
don't brag
all
about
part of it. Baker told me one night in London 12 years ago. He said, "What's going on in the world?" One of the things, this was 12 years ago, is that, and they'll discover it one day, is that the biggest money being made in the world right now is through pedophiles, through chains and groups of pedophiles. And he said, all these news agencies, not all of them, but the majority of the news agencies are being run by pedophiles and despicable people. And they can make a 15-minute porno movie with children. You have to go on the dark web to find this stuff. It's true, it's there. And they can charge $500 for people to watch these pedophiles abuse these children, and they might get 10 million viewers at $500 a pop for 15 minutes of video. So it makes more money, see, than the drug cartels. That's the thing that the average person doesn't know. And but it's all gonna come to an end.
So it's just kind of peaking. A lot of that is just kind of peaking right now. So what do you feel is the best way for people like us to deal with it right now?
Well, don't get involved in it.
Well,
Stop.
Don't cooperate with evil.
don't watch kiddie porn. No, but
Yeah, be aware of it.
so why are so many
Talk
humans?
to other people about it.
Why is there so much human trafficking and pedophilia and they're normalizing it? What is happening to humans that's causing them to be that
I
way?
explained it earlier. It's the end of the
Number 4?
Pleistocene age.
And number 4 is too, right?
Number 4, the fourth ray.
And the transition.
Yeah, and the birthing of the Aquarian age. So all of the evil comes to the surface, which is a good thing.
And that goes with the Mayan calendar too.
Yeah, Tracy.
That kind of goes along with what we were speaking of earlier tonight, the Christ and the Antichrist.
Yeah, say
And
it.
it's a matter of being aware. We have to become observers. And what this is actually creating is people are starting to have to discern now. They have to wake up
Mhm.
what's real and what isn't.
Develop discretion.
They
Most
have to
people,
develop discretion, and they talk about in the Bailey book, DK mentions Christ versus Antichrist. What is the Christ? What is the Antichrist?
what is the Christ and what is the
And the
Antichrist?
Christ is the spiritual aspect. We have to realize we're more than just this physical body, and there's
The
more
being.
to it. And the Antichrist is materialism,
Well,
greed,
Mhm.
and lust,
Carnal.
and all of
right.
it.
I
So-
understand that, but in our daily lives,
Mhm.
what is something that we can do to feel
Talk
like
to
we're helping
others
to turn
about
it
it.
around.
Talk to others about it because
Like
people,
we're doing right now.
especially,
Start groups and get involved, yeah.
get
Okay.
involved in it.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. I just,
There's a lovely lady out in California. It's called A Million Kids. And she's got a group that fights sex trafficking of children. And mail her a check for $50 or $100 every once in a while and help her out. See, she works with the police, the state police in California, and the local county sheriff where she lives. And they're bringing these children across from Mexico. And of course, that's always been a problem in Mexico.
Mhm.
But now they're bringing them into America. See, and the depravity of it is based on just the degenerative effects of pornography in general.
Mhm.
You know, it goes lower and lower, and you can only get so low, and then you start having snuff films where you kill people. You have sex and you kill them.
Right.
See, so you've taken it as far as you can.
Or then they're torturing them so they think they get that thing out of their blood or
You
something
get the
like that, and it's gonna-
adrenochrome. Yeah.
But the problem is some of the people in the criminal justice
It's all
system
gonna come out.
are bought and paid for too.
Yeah, it's all, the
Right,
fourth
they are.
ray, the fourth ray will bring about harmony through conflict. That is the characteristic
So
of
that's
the
just what we're
fourth ray.
going through right now.
That's
So I
it.
guess we have to accept that and do the best that we can.
So you have 7 minutes.
7 minutes. Anybody out there in the Zoom meeting have any questions you'd like to ask tonight? People are as reluctant, especially in America. They don't know how to ask questions.
David,
Yeah.
I'll ask you a question. We're talking so much about the evil stuff that it's giving me the willies. Can you talk about Christ consciousness? This is one way that we can turn things around, is just keeping the vibrations up.
Yeah. Yeah, you do what I said earlier. You meditate, keep a spiritual diary, read the esoteric classics, do only good in the world. It's easy to fashion that on our lips and really hard to do, but that's really what it boils down to, is trying to do good in the world. That's what we're trying to do here. This group of people here, you know, are a part of a small group. It's like, it's an alchemical organization. You know, one of the mysteries of alchemy was that in order for the alchemist to transmute the entire base metal formula into gold, he had to have a speck of gold. And that one speck of gold would change the entire formula of the base metals, or the entire characteristics of the base metals. So a small group can have a powerful impact. I think it was Margaret Mead said to that, a few people doing the right thing can bring about tremendous change. And she said, in fact, that's always the way it's been, or something to that effect. It's always been just a very few people, Christ and Buddhists of the world, who changed millions, billions of people. And that's what we're trying to do here with our meetings that we've had every Wednesday up until at least December. But we're kind of just having a culmination period tonight where we can look back and kind of rehash some of the things that we talked about over the last 15 or 16 months.
David, I have a question. This is Jeff Crone calling. Hello, everyone. I'm on Zoom here and
Hi,
haven't
Jeff.
seen anyone for quite a while. But anyway, I have a question and comment. There's been such controversy with sexualities and gender identities and pronouns and everything. And with Pride Month coming up in June, what is your take on the esoteric evolution of the souls? Because there is controversy / celebration, and it's very polarizing in many communities and religions. So in the scheme of esoteric and rays and new souls coming in, or old souls reincarnating, how does it fit in the scheme of the Aquarian age and the evolution
So
of?
it's a great question. What's happened is this. The population of the world has quadrupled in about 120 years. It's quadrupled. And because it's quadrupled, that means that souls, that the wheel of rebirth is speeding up. And that it used to be that you would live, and then you would die, and you would stay out of incarnation for maybe 1,000 years or 10,000 years. But the population of the planet was almost negligent during the Ice Age. There might have been 100,000 people on the planet during the Ice Age. Now you've got 7.5 billion. So the wheel of rebirth is speeding up. The more people are born, and they're living longer, the wheel is speeding up. And the time between death and rebirth is down, they've proven it in some cases, down to a matter of days or weeks. And souls will reincarnate.
So the conflict largely is fourth ray happening as far
That's
as
part
that
of it. Yeah, but that's part of it. But you have to hear the explanation behind it. It is not uncommon for a soul to reincarnate into a male, let's say a female body, for 20 or 30 lifetimes. And then all of a sudden, because this wheel, just in the last 100 or so years, has speeded up, they're now reincarnating at a much more rapid rate in less time. So they incarnate, the permanent atoms of the soul, reincarnate with the memories of mental Adam, and they think, you hear them talk about it. It's why I never criticize homosexuals or lesbians or any of those people, people who have confused gender identity. I get it. I understand why they do. And that's the reason why they do. And so you hear them say things like, I'm a man trapped in a woman's body, or I'm a woman trapped in a man's body. That's it. It's the whole thing. They've speeded up the time between death and rebirth is down to just a matter of, some people say hours, could be, but that's the big explanation.
Okay, 8:30.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to have to cut it off now. And thanks for the question, Jeff. And you can call me if you want further
Sure.
explanation.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thank you
give
for
you
your
more detailed-
commentary and insights.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, folks.